Hello, Thrive Nation. I've got one of the brightest minds in health. This man's an entrepreneur, intrapreneur. He's built businesses. He's absolutely exploded within 24 hours online. He's got an incredible story. This man, I want to get into Africa because he's changing the face of mental health and beyond. So welcome to the show, Mark Effinger, aka Mr Noots.
Steve, so good to be here, brother. Thank you.
Brilliant. Now, we're going to start with what is a nootropic?
So there's a broad definition, and then there's our definition. The broad definition are neurochemical precursors that essentially help you mentally perform better. We have a layer above that. So that's a good operating system to think about, right? But the layer above that is compounds that produce neurogenesis, or the creation of new neurons and dendrites and all of the key things that help make the brain operate well. And then components within that, a subset of that, are things that help you to create change in your mind. So not just the creation of new neurons and those things, but state change. So whether it's better focus or better creativity or more love or more connection, or the ability to handle more data points in a more elegant fashion, the ability to not have cognitive fatigue after doing a lot of cognitive processes, those kinds of things, or task switching, faster, more elegant task switching. Those are things that it's a promise of nootropics. Anybody that's seen the movie Limitless will kind of have an idea of, is there a clear pill? Is there an NZT available for you and I? And the answer is yes.
Brilliant, because I deal with a lot of corporate CEOs, executives. They're looking for the mental edge. They need to stay focused, or creatives in the creative space. They need to be able to actually come out with some incredible plans in their businesses. And at the end of the day, if they've got fatigue, mental fatigue, it really hampers their work. And even the person staying at home who has to say no to the lemon meringue, who's got mental fatigue, it obviously helps with self-control, discipline. We'll go into those, but I want the audience to really latch onto some stories, because people can really relate to stories. So give us your 3 top stories. I know you've been in health for so long. Give us your 3 top stories of how nootropics changed people's lives.
I love this. If you'd like to go into a backstory, the way I got here was in the early 90s, I heard a radio show where a gentleman was talking about a thing called huperzine A, which is an acetylcholinesterase inhibitor. Basically, it keeps acetylcholine flowing in the synapse between neurons, and it doesn't allow the enzyme that normally is there to break it down. It doesn't allow it to break it down. So you keep having this acetylcholine available, which means you're going to have more cognitive performance. You're going to be able to think more. You're going to be able to memorize things better. You're going to be able to have better memory recall. So that's what kind of got me into it. And I went in and consulted with him for a year, and in that process dramatically increased his business, because my stuff was, this is in the early days of the internet, very early days of the internet. Amazon was just a glimmer in Jeff Bezos' eye. And so I thought, and I felt the same way he did, except he came from venture banking and I came from startup land. And it was a very, very different world. I was a bootstrapper and he was, let's go raise some institutional cash. So I built a business around that for a couple of years, and that was my insight. The aha moment was working with 20 Intel engineers in an R&D lab and helping them get off of coffee and onto this acetylcholinesterase inhibitor, and watch their performance just skyrocket. So that was the aha. You can actually do something that does cognitive performance improvement, makes it happen. At the same time, shortly after that, my wife at the time and I had our 3rd home birth. We were those geeky family that said, let's do a hot tub or a birthing chair. This last one, Livy is her name, and she works for us today. She was born on a leather couch in front of a roaring fireplace. It was a beautiful, beautiful birth. The midwife who was overseeing our process, she handed my wife was very small hips, and she tore a little bit when the baby came out. And so the midwife gave her 4 oxycodone. Those oxycodone became her muse for the next decade, until they became the demise of her, where she committed suicide on those very same oxycodone a decade later. So that got me pissed. And I had a bit of a biochemical background. I'd already built one nutrition company. I felt that maybe I could help people get off of addictive substances. So that led to working every month and a half. I would head out to a rehab clinic and start working with the people that were incoming, the people that were the worst off, the people they were scraping off the street or, taking out of jail, or somebody had, a CEO had said, I've got to get in there or my wife's going to leave me, or my husband's going to leave me, whichever it was. And so that gave me real insights on how people address things like this mental failure or this addictive issue. And it was, the very clear message was, it's embarrassing to go to a rehab center because you're now showing your weakness, right? It's expensive especially if you've been there 2 or 3 times and the insurance company saying X-nay to the payment. And it's going to take you 6 to 12 weeks or even longer to be able to go through their whole process. And, and they're going to be addicted to 2 to 4 different meds when they get out. And of course, if they forget to get to the drugstore in time, their former dealer is only a speed dial away. So these were the things that I was kind of going, there's got to be a solution to this. And that led me on this trail of going, okay, from my perspective, the solution is, if I can inexpensively, quickly, and effectively help you to get your head detoxed and clear, you're going to make better decisions. Then the next thing was, most of the people that I dealt with, especially if they were on a heavy stimulant like cocaine or speed or meth or one of these substances, and especially these high performance individuals, right? I mean, hookers and blow was the statement that we would hear in the 80s. That was like how you got through as a CEO.
Yeah.
Right. And so when you go off of those things, your adrenals are burned out, your cognitive performance is blunted, and you feel like being a couch potato. So the second thing was, how can I help people increase their ATP, the natural energy that your cells make, so that they would have the energy to execute on this clearer thinking they're able to accomplish? So you get clear thinking, then you get the energy to accomplish. That's going to give you some modicum of success. And that success will feed on itself. You get a little bit of success, you get the dopamine reward, and you get the thrill of adventure back in your life. That's just fuel for further success. And as long as you see that as the energy and not head to your former drug when you go, all right, I'm back and let's go, where's the blow, right?
Yeah.
So that was kind of the scene. And in the process of doing that, I created 3,000 different formulations over a 4-year period and was able to pair molecules. And many of them were again, neurochemical precursors. Because one thing I learned was that if you give people the direct element, the direct neurochemical that their body wants, it will signal the body to quit making those precursors and
negative
quit making that.
Loop. Yeah,
exactly. Yep. And so you get that negative feedback loop, that depression of those conditions, and suddenly you can't make it, and then you're highly reliant on the exogenous substitute or solution. So the idea was, what is the upstream and downstream? What are the upstream and downstream elements that happen from a biochemical, neurochemical perspective? How do we go upstream and give the precursors in the right balance, in the right formulas, with the right bioavailability at the right time of day, through the gut or sublingually, so that the body could actually respond and give you this outcome of increased cognitive performance, increased natural energy. So those were the things. So
brilliant. Now, I know we've gone into the roots, and I think that's really, really important, just so that people understand what a nootropic is. But quick stories, Mr. Noots. I need quick stories that people can say, I'm a corporate, I got these symptoms, I took this nootropic, changed my life. 3 stories if you can.
You got it? All right. Number one, first one was a phone call 3 months into the creation of these products, after we'd gone through all the prototyping and everything. And it was a Friday night. We were not making any money at it. We were just going, and I'm still consulting on the side, and I've got some money from a company sale I'd done prior, but it was like, all right. And my daughter and I are building these literally in our living room on the coffee table. And we're building them by hand, and we're building them personalized for every individual, which we still do today. So everybody gets custom built just for them. And we got a phone call. It was Friday night, about 6 o'clock. I hit the space bar on my Mac. I was using Google Phone, and hit space bar, and the guy comes on the speakerphone and he's crying. And I'm thinking, oh shit, we hurt somebody. Like, we don't, we've got quite a bit of research, but we don't know the edge cases of what this thing can do, because it's very powerful. And I go, are you okay? And he goes, Mark, I am so okay. He goes, I've had lupus for 3 years and I've been bedbound. I've been on your products for about 3 months, and I've got my career back.
Come on.
I've got my driver's license, which was very key to him in his career.
Come on.
And even, it was like a country song played backwards. And he got his wife, he got his dog back, all these things. And that was the first one. We were on the phone for about 20 minutes, and it was an epiphany to my daughter and I. And in fact, it caused us to write a thing that became our watchword. It was basically 5 points of why we do this.
Yeah.
And it was, basically, we needed to change people's lives. The same reason we got into this, which was helping people not have to go through the death of a loved one like we did with my wife and her mother, and be able to deal with that. And seeing this man's life completely transformed as a result of a nootropic, which has nothing to do with the condition he was in. Well, very little to do with the condition he was in, but it was starting to remyelinate the nerve sheath in his body, so he was no longer having the shorting that happens from lupus. So
what a story this is. I mean, I've been seeing autoimmune patients for 24 years, functional medicine expert. We do extensive testing. And here's a story of someone with lupus, a really difficult condition. And this is why I'm so interested in nootropics, because understanding from functional medicine, you build foundations, you build pillars for people's health. But some nootropics can radically change a person's situation who is extremely sick. So 25% of Americans in America have an autoimmune condition. I think it's very similar here in Africa. It's a real problem. And this is where these nootropics can play their role in terms of health and wellness. Some of them do not have the insight, motivation, drive, just motivating factors, resilience to actually do all the tests, but all the lifestyle factors in place. They need something to get them there. And of course, we want to build foundations, but nootropics can do that in the most remarkable way.
Agreed. Yeah, it's a life changer. I'm my anecdotal is that it took me from being the poster child for ADHD, and this is my 18th company, so it's not like I'm a newbie to building and selling businesses, but it took me from being the poster child to that to suddenly being hyper focused, hyper capable. And the one of the big things for me was I used to reserve energy. So basically, I would always look at every situation I had to be in, and I go, how much energy do I need to reserve, because I've got another meeting after this, or I've got another thing I've got to accomplish after this, or another technology I've got to develop, or management of employees, any of those things. And instead of approaching things with all of the vim and vigor of a youthful, unlimited energy kid, I was starting to pull back. And as a result of that, I was also seeing my businesses function in a different way. Now, part of it was good because I was helping to empower other people to take the reins. But the part where my superpower was always that I could outwork everybody, and I could just plow through, and I had enough cognitive resolve that I could handle all kinds of weird, obscure things, and I could pull data from all kinds of places. Well, I was reserving and pulling back on that. So once the nootropics started kicking in, and I started building these new neural pathways and reinforcing existing ones, past ones, and being able to bring that data laterally and vertically into focus, my life changed. And so that became a really profound differential that I had. And this thing that I have, I'm 61 now. And the thing that I had at 24 when I started my first business and was able to just snap popcorn ideas and come up with solutions, and nothing was going to kick my ass. The ability to get back in that place was major. So the next one would be, we've got a triathlete, world-class triathlete, who uses our solutions because, as many people know, the big challenge when you are an athlete is breaking through the mental wall of endurance, the mental wall of winning, that takes a huge amount of cognitive performance. And anybody that's been an athlete in terms of bodybuilding or weightlifting, you know that anything you buy that's a pre-workout or anything that you do as pre-workout is going to be oriented towards your cognitive performance. Yeah, there's going to be some metabolic change, adaptogens and other things, but really it's how do you muscle through that next rep and do it with that energy and keeping in alignment, making sure that you're doing it with the same form that you did on the first rep, on the last rep, right? Those kinds of things are very critical for your performance. So that was the other one. So we got a world-class triathlete that lives in that space, and our stuff gets them through. The other is that we are masters at nitric oxide production. So being able to have the blood flow and also to have it works fantastic for those characteristics, as well as male and female sexual performance. It's really a great thing. In fact, we're coming out with some neat products along that line as well. But that's really key. And then on the female side, one of the key factors, and by the way, this applies across board, one of the key factors that we humans are dealing with on a constant basis are the regulation of hormones. So one of those elements is, especially if you're female and you're approaching the age where you may be going through the change, so you get pre, peri, and postmenopausal issues, to be able to have the capacity to be able to navigate that and to be able to, and if you're a male or female and you're in your 40s, 50s, you're probably at the peak of your game in terms of business. That's kind of where you've got all the tools together, and you've had enough failures that you know how to mitigate risk, and you've had enough success to know how to kind of navigate scale, right? So those are the things. And one of the big contributing factors to that is managing and optimizing your hormone output so that the same hormone levels I was at when I was bodybuilding in my mid-20s, I now have in my 60s. And to get there is a challenge, and you've got to be able to build on that. So we ensure that our solutions also provide that kind of baseline metabolic level of pro-hormone induction so that you're able to get your hormone levels to peak performance so that you feel that. So one of our executives is a Fox movie person, and that was her kind of guide was, holy crap, if I can just get my hormone levels back. She didn't know it at the time, because she was going, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to brute force my way into my former success level. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these cognitive enhancers, and the cognitive performance is going to be my leapfrog, my lever to performance, right? But on top of that, we said, hey, let's start improve the kind of base of pro-hormones, starting with pregnenolone and DHEA, which are, you have a thing called the cholesterol hormone cascade. All primary hormones in the body come from cholesterol. That's why taking statins is a death knell. Yeah. Right. And what it's exactly trying to do, it actually ends up causing the problem, the condition, hardening of arteries and other things over time. So this is a really critical thing, is feed the body the precursors to the hormone cascade that you need, and your body will do magic with those. And then if you use signaling molecules to tell the brain and the body that, hey, I've got this precursor now, let's go and do the conversion process, the downstream conversion, the metabolites, to create the various hormones that we need. And as a result of that, her performance went through the roof, and she's now, instead of relying on a lever like a lot of people rely on coffee or caffeine or other conditional aspects, she now just gets into her mode of hormone replenishment, natural precursors to the right hormones. And that brings her baseline operating level up so high that she's now kicking ass on these 22-year-old that come in and are trying to take her position. And I think that that's a really great place for us to be able to play.
So what you're doing is you're giving the body the building blocks. Give the body the building blocks. Let the body build it. Give the body the cofactors to put the cement between the bricks. Then we build something, and we don't give the end molecule that causes a negative feedback loop and cause significant problems, which we've seen with things like melatonin. And I'm a strong believer, 13 years of functional medicine, interviewed over 140 specialists. Negative feedback is a real problem. Testosterone, same story. I've seen it empirically in my practice. I've looked at the research, which has, a lot of people say there's no problem with TRT. It might be for a lot of people, but for some people, it causes significant issues. So a patient today was given TRT, killed sperm count, wanted to try and have a child. There was no sperm. To switch that thing back on was an absolute nightmare. But I want to go here is you send me this incredible pack. I'm really grateful. I wanted to speak to you before I did the whole stack. So I did Nectar X. I did one. I felt an immediate change. Yep. Now, this is on basis of someone like myself never having missed a day's work in 24 years, Mark. Not a single day to sickness or
incredible.
Okay. Had the Delta in this pandemic was lasted 1 day. 1 day. That was it. So I'm now thinking about nootropics. I'm thinking about them seriously. I felt the difference. Tell me how, because 29% of our audience is in the US, the rest is all over the world. But what is the process of someone who wants to do nootropics and do the assessments? I found the assessments on neurotransmitters. There's a lot of assessments that are done all over the world. I was actually speaking to Dr. Jill Carnahan. You must get on her podcast. I'll link the two. Incredible person. But talking about doing amino acid testing. So we looked at tyrosine, we looked at tryptophan, we looked at a lot of people taking way too much collagen. If you're listening out there, we're talking about amino acids, you're filling yourself with proline, you're filling yourself with glycine, and you're cannibalizing the other amino acids, which is causing detrimental effects. But be that it is may, give us your process on assessment with regards to nootropic, which I want to do before I just recommend this anyway to anyone, is I need to go through the process of assessment. I need to have the bespoke, unique products that are catered exactly for me, because the future of health, according to me, Mr. Noots, is that it's bespoke, unique to your individual body, your mind, body, and soul. So take me through the process.
I love that, Steve. It is that there may be defining factors between mind, body, and soul, but the tighter integration you have, the more complete you'll be, and your performance in life in general is going to be through the roof. So the first thing we do is, and actually at the top of our website, is we give you an opportunity to do a neurochemical assessment, which is, again, it's not a clinical test like you would have where you're measuring acetylcholine levels, or you're measuring tyrosine and dopaminergic precursors and as well, or serotonergic precursors, but it does give us an idea of kind of what's dominant for you, what's subdominant, and what you may have a low point in.
I want to stop you there. Is this a free test? I mean, the website's right here. Looking at all the products at the top there, it says Nootopia. I just know that a lot of people are going to send me, do they go onto your nootopia.com and then they go where? They find the test somewhere.
It's a first button on the top of the site.
Yeah.
So click that one, and that'll get you to neurochemical analysis. And it's really valuable because it will give you the data points. Like, let me ensure that we're on the same page here.
Start. Discover your neurochemical superpowers. I'm on it. Dopamine. You fill it in. Beautiful. This is free. On a scale from 0 to 4, how to... Okay. People listening, go to nootopia.com, check it out, and then see which neurotransmitter you dominant. Is that right?
Yep, that's exactly right. And and again, this is a really easy test. It's a 5-minute analysis. It's based on the Braverman test, which is a very well-established test. It's been years in the making. And so it works out really well. And what it does for us is, when we know what your neurochemical profile is, every one of the products that we make, we customize and personalize based on these key factors. So that's part one. Where are you dominant, subdominant, and where are you lacking in your neurochemical balance? Brilliant. So that's part one. Part two is, how old are you? What's your sex? What's your age? Your weight, height? What kind of exercise do you do? How much coffee do you drink, or stims do you take during the day? What kind of vitamins or nutritional supplements or meds are you on? What's your eating habits? Are you paleo? Are you keto? What's your gig? Are you doing Body for Life? Those factors. How much water you drink a day? Are you allergic to anything? All of these key factors that would be. And then ultimately, now that we kind of know your physiology, so we've got your neurology, we got your physiology, then what are your goals? What do you want to accomplish? What are the big roadblocks that you've got? What are the boulders that you've got to knock over in order to be able to achieve the things that are important to you? And what kind of issues do you address? Like, if you have too much stim or caffeine, Do you get jittery, or is that like that's your lifeblood? Are you a Huberman,
Yeah.
right? Are you hitting a skateboard, or what's your
Yeah.
gig? And
Yeah.
so understanding that is really important. And some people hate it. They can't handle stims. They work much better with a GABA-centric physiology or much more serotonin. That's where they operate well. And so being able to customize the stacks to be able to optimize for your physiology and neurology gives you a much higher chance and opportunity to perform well.
Cool.
And then we have a feedback loop. We've got an app, and you use that app on a daily basis. Say, I took this and I took this. Here's how I felt on that, and here's some insights on me. I'm now doing OMAD. I'm doing 1 meal a day type of thing, and I'm eating this kind of food when I'm on OMAD. How does this affect this? And I took this capsule, or I did this drink, or I did this spray, and it made me feel like this. And I'd like a little more of this, or I like a little less of this. And then we incorporate that into your next order to make sure that we're always adjusting based on your progress. Brilliant. So it's an iterative process.
Now, is that AI generated, having a look at that, or do you have health coaches or nutritional coaches, or who makes those decisions? Because obviously those are fundamentally important decisions. Someone could take it and they don't feel well at all. They obviously IBS, or they might feel sick, or they just don't perform well. So who's sort of monitoring all that feedback?
Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, we don't have a Chat GP Noots yet, but but I see it in the future. We actually have an AI specialist on staff in Bosnia. He's incredible. His name is Dino. Okay. And yeah, and we have a full 20-person lab in Bosnia. We basically own part of a university there, or we fund part of a university there. It's fantastic. Incredible PhDs and PhD
Wade
candidates.
on my podcast spoke about this. Is this the same for biooptimizers? Yeah. It's the same lab.
Yes. Correct. Yep. These guys are they're incredible. It's what a blessing to come from. When we merged companies to create Nootopia, we were doing a lot of data management, because at that point we had about 14 million data points that we'd collected from our clients, our beta testers first, and then our real clients after we started opening up the doors to the business. And it was incredible, but that's a lot of data to sift through. What it was advantageous was, I can tell you that if you're 5'10", 180 pounds, you're running about 12% body fat, you're male, you happen to be doing OMAD and you're ketogenic, and your favorite exercises are parkour and century bike rides. Yeah. We have enough data that we've collected from people similar to you to go, here's what could work for you, and here's a high probability this is going to be very effective for you. That was part of it. Now we're doing radical data aggregation, and we're filtering it. And we have, on the other side of this wall over here, I have a roboticist that we've hired full time. We have a full robotics division now. And what we're doing is where we have been doing these, and we still are doing these by hand, where we measure out every component of every capsule and drink and spray, and we precision fill them based on the individual's data. We're now building robots that can scale this technology and do it with plus or minus 1.5 to 3 milligrams accuracy. So it's very, very accurate on these compounds. And if you've ever seen our capsules, which I believe you have, they're not your mama's capsules. They are a very different, unique look. And that stack is not just for cosmetic reasons. That stack is that we are literally stacking those components based on the input that you give us through these tools, so that we can make it better and better for you. So yeah, but we love AI. We think it's I assume that you've played with Chat GPT or Midjourney.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's exciting. I think there's a lot of skepticism and sort of concern, but I think there's going to be a lot of gain using AI technology. And I think people that are fearful don't embrace it. And I think that's the very opposite of what they need to do. But maybe they need a nootropic to help them embrace that. But I want to talk about the 8 neurotransmitters that are on your sort of website. Just run them through, because a lot of people, this is my first nootropic out of 145 shows. This is the first time we're really going on a deep dive. So talk about these brain neurotransmitters, what they're used for generally. If you can sort of just give a brief outline. Obviously, you're a wealth of knowledge, where people are hearing a lot of these terms for the first time. And also then possibly at the same time, look at just describing what happens if they're low or if they're high, what happens to the individual sort of clinically.
Ops, this is fantastic. By the way, at one point in my life, in a previous life, I was hypothyroid and undiagnosed hypothyroid and hypoglycemic, which is a really, really bad combination.
Yeah.
I was living in the Pacific Northwest near Portland, Oregon, and so we don't have a lot of sun up there. We have plenty of rain. So, and as a result of that, I just felt like shit, and I had no motivation. Excuse my language, but
yeah.
I had no motivation, and I also could not think clearly. I literally felt like there was a gauze in front of my eyes, and I just couldn't focus. Any of those things. So solving that was really what got me into nutrition at this level and health. But when it comes to neurotransmitters, there are typically 4 or 5 primary ones that we think of. So the first one is, and we mentioned this earlier, I usually have a picture of Andrew Huberman here that I hold up during this, but essentially dopamine is kind of one of the first ones, and that's your motivation and reward. That's a dopaminergic. It's very much a pleasure molecule. It's very key. And we have a limited amount on a daily basis of renewable dopamine. So it's very valuable to have the precursors to dopamine to be able to actually kind of refill that bucket so that we don't run out. People that use social media, and you're relying on your Facebook likes and your Instagram hearts in order to fuel your life, you're using dopamine with each of those activities. And at one point and it's a great thing for creating addiction. The dopaminergic cycle is how we get addicted to things. It's one of the primary components. So dopamine is really key. If you're low dopamine, you lack motivation. You feel lethargic, and you don't feel reward for doing things. So and that kind of feeds back on it. Well, if I don't feel like I'm getting a reward for that, who cares? Why should I do it? Right? Those kinds of things. And it's also an energetic molecule. So when you feel energetic and you feel like you want to do things on it, one of the great indicators is, again, I'm 61 and I was bodybuilding when I was 23, 24, 25, and actually moved into the back of a health club when I started that, to launch my first technology company. And when you're training, you're working out. I call it training because working out is people throwing weights around or doing, whatever. Whereas training has an objective in mind. What am I trying to accomplish? How am I trying to build my body? What are the aesthetics I'm looking for? What's the performance I'm looking for? So it's goal oriented. It has some kind of a criteria of how many reps am I going to do, and what my delay is going to be between reps, and all of those factors. So when you have good dopamine levels, you want the pain that you get from going in there and kicking ass on some weights or swimming or doing a century bike ride and getting off the saddle and throwing your bike around up a hill. You get the reward from dopamine. As your dopamine starts to decline, which partly happens with age, partly happens with all the activities that we do. Poor physiology can do that, or just burnout in general, is we suddenly don't feel the reward that we would normally get from going and doing things that are painful. And that also goes into confronting issues in our lives. If we don't have enough dopamine, trying to confront an issue with maybe a loved one or with a cohort or with a partner or with an employee, those become really, really tough events to be able to approach. And confronting is hugely fueled by dopamine. So that's the first one.
Sure.
So another one would be serotonin, which we think of as a mood stabilizer. It's not really a happiness molecule, but it is a mood stabilizer that helps us to not go through this kind of negative cycle of depression. So the challenge is too much serotonin and we get foggy. Too little serotonin, we get foggy. Way too much serotonin, we start destroying brain cells.
Yeah.
Not enough serotonin, we could give a shit about life. There's anybody that's ever taken a SSRI, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, or an antidepressant, classically classed as an SSRI. And by the way, this is not, I'm not a doctor. I'm not playing the part on the internet, but there is, and they can be lifesavers in the right amount at the right time for the right person in the very right condition. under the guidance of a medical professional. But many of the people that I've spoken with who have eventually migrated off of these SSRIs have shared with me the feeling that they got after 4 to 6 months of being on them. And that feeling was, the reason they got on them was because typically an event occurred, or they got into it, some medical condition precipitated a lack of serotonin. Most of the serotonin is made in the gut. So like keeping your microbiome healthy, something that Bioptimizers does very well, is key. About 90%, anywhere from 85 to 95%, depending on what your microbiome is made up, does that. And then there's a vagal nerve, the vagus nerve, that connects to the brain and will trigger serotonin production in the brain as well. Serotonin doesn't pass the blood-brain barrier. It's too big a molecule. But with the right precursors, it can be created in the brain through these activities. There's an enzymatic activity that happens with some B vitamins and some other, again, downstream metabolites that create serotonin. So phenylalanine, which is a amino acid, is a great precursor to that. And a little bit of L-tyrosine can help in there, or acetyl L-tyrosine can help in that. But so with that, what you're trying to do, or what we found with people that were on that, is what an SSRI does is it traps serotonin between the synapse. Calcium ion cloud surrounds it, and what it's doing is basically saying your serotonin. Now, serotonin is going to cross the synaptic gap. It's going to go into the new neuron. Then it's going to flow back to the original synapse. And it's going to flow forward and back until that calcium ion cloud dissipates. And then suddenly it flows one way and it's broken down. And that's it. Well, there's a signal that occurs whenever you start recycling neurochemicals in the brain. That signaling tells the brain, hey, I got enough serotonin. Don't give me any more. Same thing happens in the dopaminergic when you get on Adderall or similar, right? So it basically says, hey, I got enough dopamine. I don't need any more. Well, when that happens, as soon as the drug wears off, as soon as its half-life is complete, your brain goes, where the hell do I get the dopamine, or where's my serotonin, right? And it's struggling to try to keep up. People on Adderall will tell you that they just feel, once the Adderall wears off, they feel depressed, they feel unmotivated, they become couch potatoes. People on SSRIs, when they go off them, they get frightened, they get anxiety, because they're starting to feel this kind of like this anxiety that comes up, this pressure that comes up that says, holy crap, I need more serotonin. And their body's not making it because it's been downregulated. And again, this reverse feedback loop causes this deficit of a very critical neurochemical. What we like to do, again, is we like to give you the precursors and then signaling molecules that say, hey, you've got all the raw product. How much do you want? We've got a machine. We can produce as much as you want. Yeah. We can produce surplus if you need, to be able to handle the kind of events that take that neurochemical. Right. So now we've got dopamine, we've done serotonin. Next one is GABA, and GABA is a very critical neurotransmitter to chill. If you want to be able to make really clear decisions, having enough GABA in your system so that you're not flying off the walls and making just these rather emotional decisions, or they're just unclear, you don't have outcomes in mind, or you're not thinking through third order consequences. All right. If you're not doing that, that's where GABA can really come in. And in fact, we have a GABA spray called Zamner juice. Yeah. Zamner juice, GABA spray, right? I don't know if you've tried that yet, but
yeah, no, I just tried one because I wanted to speak to you. The Nectar X made a big difference. I realized that. So obviously now we're going to try the Zamner juice under your guidance and under the test, because I think that's really, really important. I think the process is important. That's what you're saying. Okay, so Zamner juice and GABA.
Yep. Zamner juice, GABA. We also have a drink called GABAlicious as well, which is a pure GABA drink. I built it as an alternative to martinis after hours. Wow. And you can take it during the day. A lot of our clients sip it during the day that have a deficit of GABA transmitter. And again, GABA is the chill, relax. But one of its superpowers is its ability to help you make long-term decisions, and to be able to make them without the stress or anxiety of what if I'm not doing the right decision, or what if I don't make the perfect decision. It doesn't get you into wrong decision making. It helps you make the right decision, not only for now, but for the second or third or fourth step down the line, where there may be some repercussions that you need to rethink. So it helps you make really good long-term decisions. And it's really powerful for actually taking the edge Like if you find yourself wired to the gills because you just did a extra large venti Starbucks, right? And you're smoking on that, and then suddenly you're doing some nootropics or something else, and suddenly you're starting to rifle up those levels of stims. There's nothing like a little Xamarin juice to chill you down. This
Beautiful.
I developed for a medical professional, a woman who owned emergency care clinics in the Pacific Northwest, Washington, Oregon. And because Portland, Oregon has grown so big over the last few years, it's over 2 million people. The arterial freeways are parking lots most of the day, very much like Los Angeles or San Jose. And so unless you hit it at just the right time, you're in a parking lot. And so she came to me because she said, here's a problem. I'm trying to manage all of these institutions I've got. I think she had 7 of these critical care clinics. And she goes, I'm stuck in traffic half the time. And when I'm stuck in traffic, I want to go get out of my car, go to the trucker in front of me, rip him out of the cab, beat the shit out of him, take his truck and mow over the rest of the cars to get to my destination. So she said, make me the anti right drink. And so that's what this is. And because I needed it to act fast, I made it a sublingual spray so that just a few sprays under the tongue and it immediately goes to work, increasing GABA levels so that you're able to make better decisions, not kill all the friendly truckers on the road, and be able to make it so that you don't.
We need that. We need we got power cuts like 4 times a day. Yeah, we need GABA-licious, that we need Xamarin juice too. So yeah, we got to get that in Africa. Okay, so cool. So GABA, serotonin, dopamine. Next one.
So the next one is, and this is a super critical one that people need to know how to manage, and that is acetylcholine. So again, acetylcholine is memory, recall, thinking, and often it's involved in the creative process. Now, Stephen Kotler would argue with me. In fact, he did argue we had a Facebook argument one day on how critical it is to flow. And he says, no, I don't think acetylcholine is in flow state. And I think exactly the opposite. I think it's a steady, low flow of acetylcholine helps us to get into this kind of process of being able to manage a bunch of creative lateral thinking things without our brain getting in the way, without if we have the executive function blocking us, because very much like we spoke about with GABA, if we're afraid to make a move because we don't understand what the outcomes can be, that's a block. But if we don't give a shit, if we go, all I'm going to do is I'm going to outflow ideas and I'm going to get creative. I'm going to work with my teams and no idea is a bad idea, right? Let's just get that open. And that's where acetylcholine can be super powerful. And again, what it does is it helps you to memorize. It helps you to recall. So one of the things you'll notice on almost every nootropic stack is there a source of choline or there's a precursors to choline. And that's really powerful in helping you get to these cognitive performance levels that we all talk about. Again, when we think about Bradley Cooper taking the clear pill, walking up the stairs to the apartment complex, and he suddenly the lights come on, everything's a little sharper, the lights are a little bluer, his eyes are crisp, he hears the bicycle wheels spinning, he sees the book in the book bag from his landlord's sweetheart, and he's able to recall where he saw that back years ago in his college life. That's real. You can actually have that experience, and it's not just a one-time thing. But the other important characteristic of acetylcholine is it helps to groove in neural pathways. So neural pathways are the conduit. They're the superhighway in the brain to the accessing the different things we want, the different memories we have, the different colors. For me, I'm a pattern recognition guy. So I remember things by going, it's on page 184. It's in the upper right-hand corner. And there was an ad below it. There was a 1 column inch ad that ran 2 inches long. And that's how my brain works in recalling information. If I have a deficit of acetylcholine, meaning I don't have enough, I will have a tendency to kind of see it for a glimpse, but then it'll go away and I go, God, where the hell was that?
Yeah.
Whereas if I have enough acetylcholine, it's perfect. It's actually, as I'm thinking about it, it's coming into focus and coming into view. Brilliant. So, and that's why it's a very critical part of a nootropic stack is to have acetylcholine precursors and sources of acetylcholine to flow into that synapse and give you that recall. And again, one of the cool things that happens, Steve, is as you start building neural pathways, as you start up leveling your performance through these nootropics, and you get those different neurotransmitters in balance and optimized, kind of like a rock band. You've got one, you got the bass, you got the treble, you've got your guitarist, and you got your keyboardist, and you got your vocals and drums. Each one of those is a neurotransmitter. And sometimes you want a drum solo, and sometimes you want a cappella vocals. Sometimes you want all of them working very smoothly across all their ranges with a little bit of bass coming in at the right time, a little slap. You got Flea doing slap and pop on a little, right, on Red Hot Chili Peppers, or you've got, and you want to get Steve Vai doing this incredible extended note that he's wagging there on the guitar. And that's kind of how the neurotransmitters work. And when you start getting those things in balance, you don't need the nootropics will be there to just boost them higher. But as you're building neural pathways, they become permanent parts of yourself. As you start building your body, you start building your nutritional levels, and you're getting your workouts in comfort. You start breathing well. You start doing all of the things. You meditate. You take time out during the day to do those, whether it's Pomodoro technique or other things, where you're cycling your energy and you're optimizing your energy levels. Then the nootropics become these superpower that help take you from sick to superhuman.
Yeah.
And those are levels when you understand, and we have a free book that we give away on the website as well. You can download the PDF.
Okay.
And it helps you to understand how the neurochemicals are going to work for you. And then even how you can slot in our solutions, our different solutions, to be able to optimize that neurochemical balance you want in your life at that moment, to get that thing done that you want to accomplish for the period of time that you need to accomplish that thing. And that's when things get really exciting, because you're running at a hyper effective level.
Okay.
Your confidence goes up, your ability to execute goes up. Yeah.
Brilliant. So those are the 4 neurotransmitters. You want to unpack any others that are really, really important before I get into, Mark, your specific nootropic sort of formulation that you're using, your test that you did on neurotransmitters? I'd love for a sort of an example, but are there any other neurotransmitters you want to unpack?
Yeah, norepinephrine or adrenaline is absolute key. If you don't have that's a little key in a lock that triggers most of those to action. But you want to get that, but you want to be careful. If it goes on, if you have an adrenaline rush, we all know that event, the white knuckle event of somebody slamming the brakes in front of you, or the person that comes in and says, "Hey, by the way, we just got served. The attorneys just showed up, and right, bad news." Any of those things, that adrenaline rush and the cortisol, the resulting cortisol. One of the big problems with that is that's going to wipe out serotonin in the gut, and it's going to cause drowsiness, fatigue, inability to confront issues, and it's a real negative. So managing the norepinephrine and managing adrenaline levels is really critical. But it is also critical that you have it. Without it, you're just not going to feel motivated, and you're not going to feel it's a great trigger for your dopaminergic system. If you have dopamine and noradrenaline or norepinephrine running at the same time, you're indomitable. You can run through walls. You can get shit done that you never thought you could get done before. And your confidence goes up because your ability to think through situations at a rapid rate, again, buffered with maybe a bit of GABA, enhanced with acetylcholine so that your thinking processes are accurate, is incredible. And that becomes like this cascade of neurotransmitters that fuels you to these successful events. But the cool thing is, once you do that, once you've taken these neurochemical precursors, you've excited them, you've got them moving for you, and then you've gone and done that event, you've now built this neural pathway, and you can go and literally mentally go to that place. How did that feel? What was that event? Like reflectively. And you can go there again with or without the neurochemical precursors. And over time, you just build that strength. And that becomes this process that you do. This is, building, whether it's kind of a mental muscle memory is what you're building.
Okay.
So I'm a former tennis player, so I know exactly how I want my stroke to be, what my grip is going to be, where the racket head's going to be, right? What tension is on the racket, where I want to hit the ball, how I want to stroke the ball to get the right spin on it, to go over the net, to do exactly what I want to do. And I can go, I grab a tennis racket and I immediately know exactly what to do because I've got that muscle memory.
Yeah.
The same thing happens cognitively when we're doing nootropics. They help to speed up the development of those neural pathways so they become dependable, reliable, and fast acting. You can attack them right away. You can get to them. You walk into a meeting and you know exactly how you're going to approach the meeting. Your intuition is higher. Your ability to sense what needs to be said. The selection of words is better. The selection of who you need to talk to get that done. And also the understanding and the empathetic understanding of when you're dealing with people of what they're capable of handling. What are the metaphors that are going to help bring them into the deal that you need to make? The kind of, right? You're doing a cognitive baton pass to these people. And in order to do that effectively, you have to understand their language. You have to understand the non-spoken, the nonverbal cues they're giving you and respond to them. And nootropics are really effective at helping you to see and sense those things and be able to execute on them because your brain is working at that speed, that lightning fast speed.
Wow. Okay, brilliant. Let's talk about your stack and your results of your assessment in terms of your neurotransmitters and what you're doing on a daily basis.
Love it. So I'm, if you couldn't tell, I'm dopamine and acetylcholine high.
Okay.
I have enough serotonin. I actually am a very positive person, a motivated person. Part of that was built at one point. I was suicidally depressed. And so that was built over time by using these tools as a way to, again, build this positive reinforcement loop. And so it's great. And so I use, like before this call today, what I did is I did some Xamarin juice just before we got online.
Yeah.
That helps to kind of bring me down so I'm not a steamroller. Right.
Oh, Benny.
We're having a dialogue, brother. I'm not here to
just.
It's
true.
So that was one. So I bring that up because I am deficient in GABA. I'll have a tendency to go into an anxiety mode to a certain extent, not a high anxiety, but enough that I'm not being effective in dialogue. And then I started with a brain flow. Brain flow has a very light amount of a very long flow of dopamine, but it's very light. So you don't feel it hit you. You just notice that you're more cognitively aware. You're happier about execution. You're confident in execution, those kinds of things. And then the other is a serotonergic capsule. It's called Upbeat. And so I take that to reinforce my serotonin levels. And especially before calls like this, where I want to have good recall, I want to be able to empathize with you and understand where you're coming from. That's my go-to. So those three are the thing. And then earlier today, I was sipping on a Nectar X because I knew I needed that cognitive, and I wanted to have more verbal fluency in our dialogue because rumor had told me that you're a pretty damn sharp guy, and I needed to be on my game. Otherwise, you were going to be
grilling you. So. But you've been on point. We are coming to the end of the show. I've got two very important questions I know I'm going to get comments on. One, nootropics, CBD, and psychedelics, the interaction of these, what people should do, because obviously psychedelics and psilocybin and a lot of these is sort of coming to the fore here in Africa. So tell us the intricacies and sort of the probably the problems or concerns or risks that people might sort of have doing those three combinations.
I love this. I was a district tennis champ and a state tennis player, and I played on a high level of psilocybin. So it was what really saved my game and helped me groove in. So when you're taking those are high serotonergic and dopaminergic substances. And by the way, I'm a big fan. I think that they're incredible. In the business that I'm in, I'm not at the moment, I'm not able to take them, but I think that they're incredibly effective, and I'm bullish. I'm bullish, especially on microdosing and using it as a way to build synaptic activity and really to recover from synaptic death and other issues that people have had. So what you want to do on that, though, here's a power move that I think is really valuable. So when you're taking something, let's say you're on a psilocybin microdose, you're doing 200 milligrams or 250 milligrams of psilocybin. I highly recommend stacking it with an Upbeat, which is, again, a serotonergic, and it will make it act like a gram. So you'll get the performance You'll get the amplified performance because you got serotonin precursors in there, and you have some B vitamins and adaptogens that are going to actually amplify the effects of psilocybin and psychedelics. And the other, what you'll also achieve in that is a proliferation or blooming of new neurons rather than incremental new neuron growth. You're going to get rapid new neuron growth, and that can be very effective for, especially people that are using this as in clinical. And they really want to raise their baseline operating. It does it in a really great way, and you don't get any collapse after it. So you don't get, the fall off is so smooth you barely notice it, but you'll notice that your cognitive performance both during and after will be elevated. So it's a great way to basically amplify those psychedelics and get you into a super place of performance. What were the other two that you had on there as well?
CBD.
CBD is fantastic. Huge fan, by the way. Take it daily.
Yeah.
So the endocannabinoid system in the body, there's a molecule in there that is actually all about kind of hyper pleasure, and so being able to articulate that, and that's where things like brain flow, Nectar X, and again the Xamarin Juice come in really valuable. They help it, and those are great. I mean, if you really want to get into both the pain killing aspect of it and also flow state, take that with the nootropics and you'll get that, you'll kind of accomplish that. So that's a really powerful one. Brilliant.
Last question, Mark, Mr. Noots. Thank you so much for your time. A message for South Africa, Africa of hope. This year has been a very difficult year for us because of a number of reasons, political instability, corruption, also load shedding, which is power cuts at least 4 times a day. Many times there's a lot of negative energy. There's a lot of emotional pain. I call it emotional vomit. I've been in practice 24 years. This year, people have come to my practice, have come to Matus Ra, which is my health optimization company. And just there's a lot of emotional vomit. They're in pain, they're suffering, there's instability, there's uncertainty. Give people a message of hope when it comes to nootropics.
A couple things. One, first, know that North America is with you. We love you. We need you. South Africa has spawned so many incredible revolutions that have helped change the world. So I traveled with Peter Gabriel for a year, and his whole thing was hope for. So that's one. So nootropics are going to give you the capacity to get far beyond the conditions that you're being subject to, and you'll be able to see a much brighter light at the end of the tunnel.
Wow.
And it happens during the sick to superhuman process. Is you will have that experience immediately, and it will help keep you from succumbing to the otherwise difficult challenges.
Brilliant. It seems like everybody's going to need nootropics, and I'd like you to go to nootopia.com, go and check the assessment out there. I'm going to be going through the process and really getting as many products as we can. This is bespoke, this is unique, this is not just generally something out there without any feedback. I think the feedback loop is brilliant. I think the app is something that's absolutely necessary. So this is the whole system, not just throwing out, going to a pharmacy, picking up something and hoping for the best, having a side effect, and then finish a quarter of the bottle and say nootropics don't work. So thank you so much for your time. Mr. Noots, I declare favor and blessing over you. We thank you for your calling, that you would absolutely thrive, that your influence would grow. This collective consciousness of transforming people's lives and bringing light and hope are the people that I want to connect with. So thank you so much. I look forward to giving you an oxytocin hug of 20 seconds at least. And that's what the research shows, 20 seconds to just give you a dose of oxytocin from me. So thank you so much for your time.
Dude, I get the love, brother. I get the love. Thank you so much, Steve. Much appreciate you.